Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tom Burns and this is, I'm doing a video, top 5 creepy voodoo and witchcraft stories. Now, these are the top 5 scariest creepypastas that obviously have to do with voodoo and witchcraft. It's from Top 5 Unknowns. Go check their channel out, they're pretty awesome, I've seen a lot of their videos. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Blasphemous HD and to the Real Rejects. They are my inspiration to do these reaction videos. I hope you enjoy this video, and I will
It originally was a religion largely practiced by Western Africans. However, a lot of people who have experienced this abnormality suggest that witches or witch doctors use this as a form of witchcraft to bring horror and death into people's lives. These are 5 creepy voodoo stories that will frighten the brain out of your skull. Number 5. Candace and her great-grandmother were migrant workers who moved to southern Texas, closer to the Mexican border. Gypsies were common to travel through the area to sell various items to the people who lived there. One day, a woman went to their house to sell items, but none of them were an interest to Candace's great-grandmother. The gypsy woman was very persistent and wouldn't accept no as an answer. The irritated great-grandmother had enough of her and yelled out some offensive words at the woman in order to run her off. They both got into it and exchanged words at each other. The gypsy woman ended the conversation by saying, "You will die soon," by choking on your tongue. And the door was closed shut on her. It hasn't been a full year yet, and Candace's great-grandmother had a heart attack, and indeed she choked on her own tongue. It was later recognized that the gypsy woman was a witchcraft practitioner and had cast a voodoo spell on Candace's great-grandmother. Number 4. This story...
What the fuck? That was just honestly, fucking voodoo and witchcraft stories freak the fuck
dates
out
back
of me.
in 1800s when the Odo family decided to move into a mansion in Florida. The Odos had hired many servants to maintain the house, including this woman who was hired to take care of their son Robert. The woman had the tendency to practice strange rituals in the backyard. These tendencies were caught by the husband, where he decided to dismiss this woman. But before she left, she had given the son a doll that looked quite real. It stood 3 feet tall. Its eyes were made from buttons. It had hair that resembled Robert's and was filled with straw. Robert adored the doll. He would often dress it exactly how he would dress himself. Everywhere he went, he would take him along. He would sleep in bed with him and had even named it after himself. Since Robert owned the doll, he started to exhibit strange and irrational behavior. He would isolate himself in a corner with the doll on a chair and would have full-on conversations with it. Stranger things started to break loose, where household items would be found thrown across the room at random, and giggling would be heard from Robert's room where the doll was placed. The parents couldn't keep up with the strange things going on and decided to lock up the doll in a box in the attic where he resided for years. Several years later, Robert had grown up to become a painter and moved into the mansion with his wife after his father's death. He went into the attic to recover his childhood's doll toy and became immensely attached to it, and even had a small chair in his room where the doll would sit there glaring at them while they were sleeping. Strange things started to reoccur in the mansion. The doll would attack people and sometimes locking them into the attic, and the servants would hear laughter coming from its room. The doll was then replaced back to its original box in the attic, but somehow he would be found elsewhere around the house. One night, the doll was found in the owner's bed, giggling with a knife in its hands. This made Robert and his wife move out of the house. Today, the scary item resides in East Martello Museum in Key West, where he apparently continues to be menacing by switching the lights on after maintenance service would shut them off. Number 3.
Fuck, that was
The
creepy.
story I'm about to tell you happened to a family in Pennsylvania in 1929. The baby of the family was diagnosed with a high fever. At the time, there were no treatment for it. One night, a stranger knocked on the family's door and had told the family that there was a curse that was placed on the baby by someone else. He told them that it was possible to break the curse, but that the person who had cast the spell on the baby would die. Despite the doubt that this family carried on the stranger, they had no other option, and in despair, they let the man in and let him do what he had to do. The man would pray on the baby all night and would go through series of trances. The next morning, the family woke up to find that the baby's fever had gone away and that he was healthy again. They couldn't believe it and thanked the man. But before leaving, he said, "Now someone in your family is dead," and departed from the house. The family was confused. They'd never seen the man ever before and knew that they will never see him again. All they can feel is joy for the baby's healthy return. The aunt went around to all the family's relatives to spread the good news. But as she entered the father's home, she found that the stepsister of the baby was hanging by a rope from the chandelier. She had been the only one who died in the family. It was concluded that the sister, who was used to being the only child in the family, was so jealous of the newborn that she started to seclude herself in her room, practicing dark magic. Number 2. This story takes place in the late 1980s in the city of Monterey. The family was large. The grandparents had a son and 6 daughters. This hunting story happened to the second oldest daughter named Lisa. Lisa would usually stay awake after midnight talking to her sister Val. One night, Lisa had her head turned towards the window that faced the street. Her sister Val had her back to it. Lisa randomly looked out the window and saw something standing on the branches of a tree. That something would stand still, staring at them. She described it as an old, short woman that was dressed in all black, which looked more like feathers. It had eyes that were red as blood. It didn't have any pupils nor any white around it. It was purely red and shining. At first, she thought it was a bird standing, but the thing had undoubtedly a face to it, a face of an old woman. She looked away, thinking that the thing would disappear. Lisa would often slowly look back at the window, but the thing was still there, staring at them. She told Val to look out the window, but she just wouldn't do it. Lisa became so scared that she ran to the switch to flick it on. The light bulb exploded. She screamed so loud in horror that everyone in the house had woken up. She described what she had seen, and this is what the portrait of what she described looked like. The weird part is that around 2005-2006, there was a story about 2 cops who had seen something similar. They called it the witch. You could see the full interview on Google. It's called Bruja and Menteri, meaning the Monterey witch. Number 1. Out of all stories told, this one has ought to be the scariest. Be ready for it. A little girl named Sarah was in 7th grade. She had just moved all the way from Mississippi. She had the voice of an angel, and she was seen as beautiful by most boys in her class. A few months later, a new exchange student came all the way from South Africa. Her name was Clarissa. She couldn't speak English very well, but she was deemed as nice and pretty. The boys at school pushed the spotlight from Sarah onto Clarissa. Because of that, she would get assaulted by other girls. A month later, Clarissa would ignore everyone. One night, the night of a school dance, everyone was there except for Clarissa. All of a sudden, she was seen rushing through the gym's door. Her hair were all over the place. She looked very scared and agitated. She didn't look like her typical self. She pulled out a bag and sprinkled dust from it on everyone while saying weird things and left. Everyone had ignored the strange occurrence. They laughed it off and began dancing again. A few weeks later, some classmates had stopped coming to school, and some had gone missing. Sarah had called a fellow classmate to visit her at home as she was sick. She looked very pale. She almost had no legs, no fingers, and no face. She was practically all bones. The next day, Sarah had passed away. Then one by one, classmates would also follow the same fate. Whether or not you believe in such spiritual world, there have been cases very similar to what you have heard in this segment. It's up to you to decide whether or not these stories were fictional. Let's just hope that you weren't watching this video right before bedtime.
Well, fucking hell. Some fucked up shit. I mean, the fucking pictures scare me more than the fucking stories, honestly. I mean, the first story, the that was on the video. That was the most fucked up one for me. Majorly fucked up. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button down below. I'll be doing more of these videos. I hope you enjoyed, and I will speak to you soon.